When we play board games today, we're tapping into a tradition enjoyed by people from the Victorian era, and one that has a lot of history connected to Springfield. A young man named Milton Bradley invented one of the most popular board games in the world right here. If you've ever played the game of life, you're playing a game that has its roots in this city. It was originally created by Milton Bradley back in 1860. He came here in 1856 when he was just 20 years old. His first job was as a draftsman for Bemis and Company, which manufactured locomotives. 2 years later, he took a position with Wasson Manufacturing Company, which made railway cars. Wasson had a contract to make a deluxe train car for the Pasha of Egypt, and Bradley provided mechanical drawings and supervised its construction. Upon completion of the project, the Wasson Company gave him a color lithograph of the car that he designed. That lithograph spawned a new enterprise for Bradley. He had artistic and mathematical talent, a fascination with color theory, and a little experience with lithography because he was involved in a project in Lowell when he was a student. He decided an opportunity existed in Springfield to set up a color lithography business, since the closest lithography studio was in Boston. He spent 2 weeks in Providence, Rhode Island, learned how to operate the press, purchased it, and had it delivered to Springfield in January of 1860. His first venture was creating lithographic prints of presidential candidate Abraham Lincoln. He used a clean-shaven photo of Mr. Lincoln, which was provided to him by Samuel Bowles, who was the editor of the Springfield Republican. Unfortunately for Milton, Lincoln decided to grow a full beard, and the lithographs of the beardless Lincoln soon stopped selling. So he had to devise new uses for his lithography press, and he remembered his childhood and the games his father, Lewis Bradley, had invented to teach him and to entertain their family. Bradley decided to create a board game, which he tested on his friend George Tapley. Both men enjoyed Milton's new game so much that Bradley made up some samples of it. The game consisted of a 64-square, brightly colored game board, a spinner, and of course the game rules for play. He boxed it up and went to New York City to see if he could sell it there. He called it the Checkered Game of Life. It quickly became a bestseller and sold 45,000 copies in that first year of 1860. When the Civil War started in 1861, his fledgling game business took a new turn. During this period, Bradley worked at the United States Armory as a draftsman. He often observed bored groups of soldiers who were newly mustered into the 27th Massachusetts Regiment at Camp Reed near the Armory grounds. He recognized an opportunity, and he decided to make a smaller boxed version of the Checkered Game of Life that could fit into a soldier's pocket. To it, he added 8 other games, including chess, checkers, backgammon, and 5 varieties of dominoes. He called this game kit Games for Soldiers and marketed it for $1. It was described in holiday advertisements that winter of 1861 as just the thing to send to the boys in camp or hospital for a Christmas present. Charitable organizations purchased the kits in quantity to distribute to the Union troops. Years later, it was remembered fondly by Civil War Union veterans. You can see an original game kit in our Civil War exhibit on the second floor of the Lyman and Mary Wood Museum of Springfield History. During the 19th century, games of chance were frowned upon, especially card games, which could involve gambling. Games of skill were acceptable, and games which educated their players and reinforced moral values were embraced by Victorian households. This was a period in America when, as now, people stayed at home and created their own entertainments or relied on parlor games to fill their evenings. Milton Bradley was recognized nationally as, quote, the man who taught Americans how to play, end quote. By 1864, he had fully established the firm of Milton Bradley and Company, expanding his inventory of games, puzzles, and wooden toys over the next decades. Many of these had an educational focus and included word games, games of knowledge, and map puzzles. Bradley's checkered game of life has evolved over many decades and is still marketed today in several variations of its modern edition, which is known as just the Game of Life. It became one of the company's all-time best-selling board games. Here's a picture of the game as it looked in 1960, 100 years after its creation. Today, Milton Bradley is remembered in Springfield by the elementary school on Maple Street, which is named in his honor. That school sits on a hill just several streets up from where his original factory was on Willow Street in downtown Springfield.